Hey, we are live. Hey, everybody, welcome to No Vacancy Live. And today is a special one because it's Anthony and I reunited, and it feels so good. That's Anthony Melchiori. I'm Glenn Hausman. How are you today, man?
You know, after an extensive search with the CIA and the FBI, I finally
Yeah,
found you. And
I,
after 28 days, we are reconnected. But after with the show, I'd like to know for 28 days where you've been
yeah,
in hiding. But
yeah.
apparently, my people out in the field tell me you've been everywhere.
I have been. I think the most exciting moment was when I won the mutton busting championship at the Houston Rodeo. Sure, I had to push a lot of 5 and 6 year olds out of the way to ride that mutton, but I busted it and I was champion. And you don't feel alive until you hear the chanting boos of 65,000 people. So that was great moment in Glenn's story.
What you been doing, my friend?
What have I been doing? I've been great. I've been having a lot of great experiences on the road, hosting panels, hosting events, and all of that kind of great stuff. But Anthony, I'm even more excited. Before we get started today, I want to thank our friends over at Actable. That's right, Actable. They give you the power to profit. They're a company empowering people who power hospitality. Think about their tools like Profit Sword, giving you insights that can help you make better decisions. Please check them out at actable.com. Actable.com. Hey, how do you think about that? So we got that going on as well, Anthony.
So, ask me what I think about the state of the hospitality economy in the next 6 months.
Well, the guest that we have coming up, their book is titled "True Hospitality." So I guess we're in the mood to hear it like it is, because I think at this point I'd rather to
I'm
hear the
already,
opposite of how
I'm
it
already
is.
seeing people wanting to rebudget the year. I
Yeah.
think the economy, people are very uncertain, and we don't like uncertainty. I think we're going to have a serious problem. I think it's not going to be 2008, but I
Mm.
think it's going to be bad, and I think it's going to be quicker, but it's going to be abrupt. And
Yeah.
so I think everybody's got to, save some cash.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to really look at their budgets and their capital expenditures. And I really think now is the time to really, really button down the hatchets, because this is my personal opinion. I could be wrong, but I'm already seeing some indicators telling me this. So that's what I'm thinking. I think we're going to come out of it. I think we're going to be robust again. However, the good news is that, as you saw during COVID, as soon as COVID was over, uh,
Boom.
it exploded. So I think one of the things that we forgot was there's several things that will not be taken out of a family budget. One is food, shelter, and
Yeah.
travel. Even
Yeah.
if travel is an hour car ride, okay? And I think you'll start seeing people get back in the cars, and I
Mm.
think you'll start seeing road trips again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We're going to see a shifting of stuff like that, and hopefully, the fact that Canada has no interest in visiting our country anymore, people will drive to Florida instead of expecting Canadian visitors, and that'll help supplement it. Hopefully,
Yeah,
people will decide to drive instead of going overseas and keep our industry here alive.
yeah, just that. Just Canada stop, traveling into New York and Florida, and that's going to be a problem. So
Oh,
I think I'm not here to be a naysayer. I'm not here to panic, but
yeah.
it's something that we need to be cognizant of and start looking at our market mix, start looking at our different ways we're getting business and where we're getting business and where business is dropping off. Now is the time for salespeople and revenue managers. They work hard all the time, and now is really for their experience. So if you've been doing this for 20 years, you understand. If you've been doing this for 2 years, you better go get a teacher.
Yeah, for sure. You got to get those old school tactics out there. That's what I've been preaching. I did a panel last week in Houston with Chris Green, our old friend of the show over there. And it's what we were warning. You got to get out there. You got to have those tactics. You got to be sharp. You got to hustle. You've got to be nimble, because things are going to get a little bit more challenging. But because Anthony was saying people are still going to travel, you just got to make sure you get your share. Yeah.
People are saying that at the conferences.
Oh yeah. One guy was telling me they lost $2 million in government business in March and April alone. Another $1 million in government business, and it's just going to go on and on and on. But through that, Anthony, I have been meeting great people on the road. I've been staying in some incredible hotels, from select service hotels to big full service box hotels to big conference hotels. And the one thing I've been looking for is that spirit of true hospitality. That's really important to you right there.
And let me ask you a question before we take our guest, bring our guest in.
Step all over my awesome segue, but I can handle it.
I'm going to smash it. And have you been getting awesome hospitality? Be honest.
I have been getting great hospitality. I really have been. Some places not as great as others. One hotel in particular that seems to have been a relic of a bygone era, and the vibe around it seems to have been, lost in that particular era. But other than that, really great experiences, a lot of fun people out there. And I really believe a lot of great people have come into hospitality that were too young pre-COVID. And a lot of people found their way back to hospitality that left the industry in COVID.
Great.
Yep. All right. So back to my segue, True Hospitality. We got a great author today. Her new book, True Hospitality: Lessons Learned from Behind the Concierge Desk, is being released on Amazon and elsewhere on April 8th. But Jamie Cooperstein didn't expect to get into the hotel business, just like our buddy Anthony will be here, and like so many stories that we hear day and day. Let's welcome Jamie Cooperstein. How are you, Jamie?
I'm good. Good afternoon. I'm so pumped to be on the No Vacancy Live podcast. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm so excited to have you here, Anthony. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm so pumped. Let me see some energy.
I know. Yeah. So Jamie, I guess we'll start from the beginning. You think you're going to be a sports writer. Now, then you became a concierge. But I want to tell you, we spoke to our friend, Sarah D. She's the big concierge out there on the West Coast over there. Nobody's ever called her Sarah D before. That, I think, is a first.
Well,
but
doing that is because Jamie's from the East Coast. Sarah is doing the same thing on the West Coast. She's writing a new book about hospitality. So we're starting a rivalry without you guys knowing it.
Yeah, we're going to stoke the fires, and it's going to be pretty exciting. We're going to have everybody's book sales up by causing all the friction.
Awesome. I love supporting other concierge and other hospitalians, and that makes me really excited to hear that she's writing a second book. Say that again?
You know Sarah?
Not personally, but we are certainly professional confidants, I would say.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, and you probably go to that Le Clé d'Or event and stuff like that together, and have probably been at some events kind of circling around over there. But Jamie, how did you tell us a little bit about how you get started in concierge and from wanting to be sports writering?
So as you mentioned, I wasn't even one of my wildest dreams to ever think to be a concierge. And to be honest, I didn't even really know what a concierge was. Yep. I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I wanted to be on ESPN and talk all things sports. I was one of the guys. Yep. And the true story is that I actually was told I was too local, being from Philadelphia and specifically Delaware County. The way I said
this for you and my spouse. Go Birds. So
yeah, go Birds. So, yeah, the way that I said certain words, I was basically told that I wasn't going to make it on for a national audience. And they said, just, be a writer or producer. And I did try that for a little while, but ultimately I felt like my dreams, were kind of crushed, and I had to make a pivot. And like a lot of people, I reached out to my mom for advice. I said, Mom, what the heck do I do now? For the last 10 years, all of my goals and everything was leading up to the sports industry. And she said, why don't you have a conversation with your cousin, Jeff? Mm-hmm. Cousin Jeff worked at the Rittenhouse Hotel in Philadelphia, which is one of the top hotels in Philadelphia for decades now. And I had never stepped foot in the hotel ever, but had a conversation with him. He expressed how amazing it was and cool people that he got to meet, and how it never felt like work, so to speak. Every day was different. And he couldn't promise me a job. He was just able to promise me an interview. And then the rest was history. At the interview, I was able to make a good first impression and ultimately was given the position. And I forgot to mention, I thought the interview was to be a guest service associate. Right. Not a concierge, because again, I didn't know what that was, but I'm not good with math. I had a personality. I was passionate about my hometown and being an ambassador for all things Philly. And next thing I know, at age 22, was given the job as a concierge, and my life literally changed as a result.
Well, I wish I was in the room when the person said your accent's not going to get to a nationwide audience, because I'd like to smack them and say F you to them. Because when I pitched my show, Hotel Impossible, no one has a heavier Brooklyn accent than I do. And we did 108 episodes over 9 seasons. And I've had 4 spinoffs with this Brooklyn attitude and Brooklyn accent. So I wish I was there with you so I could have smacked that person.
Well, you know what, Anthony, if I was what I know now, age 43, Jamie, not age 22, Jamie, now I would have smacked the person as well, right? And I would have had the confidence to say, I'm going to prove you wrong. 22-year-old Jamie did not have that confidence, and I was extremely impressionable. So it's a good lesson for anybody that is mentoring or working with, a young up-and-coming professional. Be careful what you say. It really carries a lot of weight.
And what's great about today is that we can flip open a laptop and have our own show. And, there's young lady on social media, Charlie. She's not very exciting. She's kind of boring, and she's probably worth $1 billion, right? And so everyone now we have what we didn't have when you were 22 years old, right? We have the ability to sell ourselves. Matter of fact, Hollywood and the middleman and the producers they're all getting out of work. It's unfortunate, but it's changed dramatically. And, this generation, we're catching up and trying to figure out how to do social media and everything, me and Glenn over the years. And Glenn was one of the first. But these kids are growing up with it. So it's not like they have to learn it. They just happen to be breathing it. And so the 22-year-old Jamie today is going to be our own sportcaster on YouTube doing our own sports. And that's the great thing. But I'm glad you fell into hospitality.
I did. It changed my life, and I had the most unbelievable mentor. The head concierge, his name was Frank, and he led by example. And boy, did I learn literally week 1 what to do, how to forge emotional connections with your guests. And, I couldn't do it exactly his way because he had a certain aura about him, but I found my own way. And really, when I took that job at the Rittenhouse Hotel at the time, I still thought it was just going to be a job. I didn't realize I was making a full career switch at that point, but it became apparent very, very quickly that this is what I was meant to do. And it's not talking to people anymore on television, but it's talking to people for a living. It just was now in person. And yeah, it was a great fit.
And it's one of the positions in the hotel business that you're really not in the hotel business. You're in the business for hospitality, and you're really an entrepreneur. It's the one department that, as a general manager, we allow that person to be entrepreneurial, because at the end of the day, I don't need you to understand how to read P&L, but I do need you to understand how to get that 3-legged elephant in the lobby in a pink tutu if the guest wants it. And that, to me, is a different skill set and that's an entrepreneurial mindset. So even though you're in the hotel business, you're really not in the hotel business, because it's the one department at least if you're a good general manager and you're running a good hotel, you leave the concierge alone.
I love that. Well said. Yeah. And I did feel very much empowered to make magical things happen. I didn't have to check and ask permission. And I also think that is a great example of leadership, in the hotel that I was working for. One thing I'll say, though, as well, being the former college athlete that I am, another thing that I fell in love with working in a hotel with 300 employees was you felt like you were part of this big team. And even though, yes, my department was just one department, I relied on so many other people in the hotel to help make magical things happen. I mean, it could even be somebody that was the person answering the phone in room service, right? Was helping me make something that happened fantastic in a room. So yes, I loved that aspect of working with so many teammates to make the magic happen.
Yeah, it's true. It's a well-oiled balancing act, I would say, after a while. So you get in there, and you say you figured out pretty quickly that you had your love of hospitality right there. So you got this unexpected calling. So how do you adapt to that? Anything needs to happen now kind of a mindset? And, how did you get things done?
So I learned pretty quickly that I didn't always have to have the answer immediately. I had to finesse some things, and I certainly had to always use the phrase a lot up front, which is great question. Let me find out for you.
Yep.
Had to use that one a lot, right? There's never a no, it's always an alternative. But no, I through my mentor, Frank, he taught me how to probe and ask questions and learn about what it was that somebody really wanted. So, if they asked for, Jamie, can you recommend an Italian restaurant? I might have initially thought, well, just recommend the Italian restaurant that's closest to the hotel.
Right.
Well, that's maybe not exactly what they wanted, right? They maybe wanted an Italian restaurant that had better ambiance or quiet table, or maybe a Northern Italian restaurant versus Southern Italian. So many variables, right? Or maybe they were going to the orchestra after and they needed the restaurant to be close to the performance.
Or maybe they wanted all you could eat pasta at Olive Garden. You never know.
Exactly.
Right? Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I had to remember to also take myself out of the equation.
Right.
And what 22-year-old Jamie might have wanted, which might have been the Olive Garden and the unlimited breadsticks, is not what Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
When I go to a concierge, I'm like, hey, I want a really good steakhouse. And they ask me questions, and I don't like being questioned. So I'm like, just give me a steakhouse. And I was like, well, where are you going to be tonight? Well, I'm going to be here. It's okay. And what kind of steakhouse? You want loud with music? What do you want? I'm like, no, I want quiet. So like the more questions they ask, like, holy shit, I'm glad they asked the questions, because I would have got the wrong steakhouse too far away from my venue, and maybe it was too loud and I didn't want loud. So yes, a good concierge. Do you know by chance Tom Wolfe? I'm sorry, Glenn. Do you ever hear of Tom Wolfe?
I do not.
Yeah, he was the first clay door in America, and I worked with him at the Plaza Hotel. And,
very cool.
And he really taught me, just by watching him, he always came out from behind the desk. I actually just remember that for the first time in 35 years, that he always came out and worked with the client on the other side of the desk. I always find that fascinating.
Yeah, don't let the desk be a kind of a barrier. I agree. That helps break down walls. Yeah. That's I would say that is a huge thing that any concierge should do, is to not let the desk be the barrier between you and the guest.
All right, so you don't know that there's 10,000 different options for Italian between locations and specialties and levels of quality. So how do you learn to ask the right questions about topics that you might not be comfortable about, to get to an answer that satisfies the customer, even though you're working in a blank space?
So that's the $1 million question, Glenn. So remember, 22-year-old Jamie was eating at Ruby Tuesdays, right, in her personal life. I had no budget. I was not fine dining. I didn't know what a prefix menu was.
Listen, I remember the days of finding enough quarters to get a slice.
Yes. So no, I had to fake it. And one of the things I really had to do was do a lot of reading and a lot of walking around the neighborhood, and certainly having as many comped experiences I could early on, and even paid experiences. And the hotel did give me, a modest budget to have some experiences, but I literally had to study and figure out, again, this was my hometown, but it didn't mean I was looking at my hometown through the lens of a concierge growing up. So, I had to figure out, okay, what is marketable about Philadelphia? So once I kind of had that, background and confidence, then it, I think, opened up the ability for me to confidently ask those probing questions. But before I could ask the probing questions, I had to get the lay of the land. And then, to me, one of the things that's fantastic about being a concierge is your city is ever changing. So just when you think you have all the answers, there's a closing, there's an opening. And I loved that, because it always kept me on my toes and it wasn't boring, which suited my personality perfectly.
Talking about ever changing, the whole cheesesteak pizza thing is changing in Philadelphia a little bit. I understand. I tried to get there the other day when I was at the live casino. Angelo's is like the new cheesesteak pizza place in Philadelphia. Have you had it?
I have not had an Angelo's cheesesteak, but I have had pizza. Delicious. There are so many places in Philly for both cheesesteaks and pizza. And keep in mind, where a local might go for a cheesesteak or pizza, perhaps is going to be quite different where a tourist might go for cheesesteak or pizza.
Going for a cheesesteak, and it's the two places that everybody talks about. Mine is now it's Nick and Frankie's, but it used to be Tony Luke's. My favorite cheesesteak in Philadelphia. I just had one the other day, and me and Glenn, we're going to go to Skinny Joey's. We're just going to need bodyguards when we go there. I was going to go see it the other night, but I guess they were opening the next day, so I want to see what Skinny Joey's all about.
All right, so we haven't had a chance to do some live stuff in a while, so but we do got a question over here. Richard is saying, how visible should the concierge be? Up front by the door, greeting people, being present, or by a booth in the foyer, or less up front? How do you feel about that, Jamie?
So I believe, again, going back to that concept of being a team player, the concierge should be posted, I think, definitely in the front lobby, so it also can lend a hand when needed at the front desk and vice versa. It could just simply be front desk might be checking somebody in. They can't answer the phone. I can even quickly help field that phone call. So if I'm too far away from the desk, not with my eyes not on, I'll use the word peripheral vision of what's going on, I think that's actually not a good thing. I did have luggage responsibilities, but again, I felt like more so being closer to the front desk was better. And certainly, and again, this might be an old school mentality, but I stood. There was no chair, literally no chair. It's probably one of the hardest parts about the job was standing for 8 hours.
Well, we saw what happened when George Costanza got that security guard a chair. You can't sit.
Yeah.
I would. Every chair at every concierge and front desk should be broken.
But as much as I cursed having to stand, I do see the merit because it allowed me to be able to be quick on my feet, pounce, help somebody. If I saw somebody struggling with luggage, again, that wasn't necessarily my job, but it now is my job. Right. So I could move quickly. So yeah, front and visible for sure. I like the concept of standing. Not good for self-care, but good for guest care. So yeah.
So tell me in your book, True Hospitality, tell me, well, it's two questions. One, I want to know why you decided to write the book, but answer that second. The first is define in a sentence what true hospitality is. In a sentence.
Okay. So true hospitality is the effortless ability to forge an emotional connection with whoever you're serving, is how I would define it in one sentence.
Write that down, Glenn.
Yeah, totally. All right. What was in that vein? What was your biggest win in forging that emotional connection with some, super crabby crank or something like that?
Most guests are very nice.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with Anthony. Most guests are wonderful. And unlike when I worked in the residential industry where those quote unquote guests never leave. If you had a bad one, at least in the hotel industry, you did know that their stay at some point was coming to an end and you'd be able to kind of take a deep breath again. But yeah, in terms of victories, there were so many. My book really is a look at also kind of my personal story and how I grew up while wearing a uniform and just was a sponge. So no, I mean, there were personal victories of like not being able to believe that I was able to pull something off. You know, I'll give a quick story. And I have to kind of time and date stamp this one. So it was 2004. So over 20 years ago when I was a concierge, and back then Botox was not really a known thing. And and it had just gotten approved by the FDA, and it was only available at a plastic surgeon's office. I didn't know any of that in 2004. I didn't even know what Botox was, okay? So picture me, again, 22-year-old Jamie, and a phone call came in from a bride-to-be who was traveling to Philadelphia to the Rittenhouse Hotel that weekend for her wedding. And she was not able to get a Botox appointment in Florida, and now was asking Jamie to assist her to get a Botox appointment in Philadelphia. I had to not lead on, let her know that I had no idea what Botox was in 2004. I was like, shoot, what is this? She's asking for a medical procedure from me. What do I do?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I quickly said, great question. Let me find out for you. Put her on hold. Without giving away the full story, I had to kind of go through my Rolodex, figure out what to do next. But when I came back on the line with her, I was able to confidently get her the appointment she needed, and made it all happen. But that's just one of many stories where I grew up in that exchange, because I both grew in my confidence, but I also grew in terms of learning what this thing was, in this case, Botox, which never had entered my dialogue ever before.
Curiosity, was she a young bride? Or
She was, I'll say, about 10 years older than I was at the time, so maybe young, early 30s. And that was also an interesting realization, because when she finally came in person and thanked me in the lobby to see this, she was beautiful, right? A beautiful sun-kissed Floridian.
She couldn't move her face at all, but she was great.
That's my question. It's like, what is a 30-year-old doing with Botox? But I guess
right. And my other question, Anthony, was, did her soon-to-be spouse know she was even getting this appointment? She, it was hilarious. So that, one of many, many stories that kind of gets unpacked in the book.
Yeah.
But this is kind of a classic.
In first-class hotels, when you work in those first-class hotels, people that get Botox and people that have expendable income, disposable income, they do things like that. And so you have to, I always, and Glenn's heard me say this to nauseam, but, when you're working in those hotels, people bought it, sold it, invented it. So they're not impressed with anything except a human emotional connection, like you just said. And that's at that level of hotel, the room they're staying in, well, they live in a hotel. They live in a house that's nicer than that beautiful suite. They drive a car nicer than the Bentley that you have at the front door. They travel to places we never even heard of. So but the one thing that doesn't go out of favor is that emotional connection. And that's one of the things I try to teach people every single day. I don't care if you have money, you don't have money. If you can connect to people, you can change the world.
Right. And they didn't need to know that I was eating at Ruby Tuesdays on my days off, right? They just needed to know that I was professional Jamie, the 5-diamond concierge, wearing my gray suit, which gave me superpowers. And that's all they needed to know, right?
It's you say that. The uniform is so critically important. It's so critically important, and exactly that. It's the people. Like, I was working at a very fancy hotel in New York as director of front office operations, and some people thought they were the guest. It's like, we wear tuxedos, but when we take them off, we're wearing shorts and we're eating at Burger King. So they sometimes thought they were the guest, and they weren't the guest. The guest is the guest. But those uniforms not only make you feel powerful, because that tuxedo made me feel like a superhero, but it also levels the playing field, because they think, oh, you're like me. No, I'm not. But okay, let's pretend for this, 8 hours that I'm working with you.
You're right, Anthony. There's a certain equity in it, both in the eyes of the guest who you're serving, but also think about it from an equity standpoint amongst the team, where I maybe did own a suit because I wore that suit to go to my interview, but a lot of those 300 coworkers of mine, they maybe didn't own a suit in their personal lives, right? So there was a certain equity that allowed them to become somebody else. And I think of a uniform as your costume, right? You became an actor, an actress for the 8 hours that your costume was on you, and you did have that superpower to be whoever you wanted to be, and it was pretty cool.
That's funny. That goes into the Disney philosophy of why they're called cast members, because they go on stage and they kind of perform in that sort of sense. That's really fascinating. So I love what you were saying in regards to figuring it out on the go and stuff like that, right? And learning these particular lessons. What is one lesson that you would like to share with people now that really made you grow at big leaps and bounds?
I was hoping you were going to ask this question, Glenn. So thank you for asking it. So one of the top lessons I learned, and I learned the hard way, is that there's a lot of gray in hospitality. Not every answer is a black and white answer. And when you're still trying to figure things out and don't have all the confidence to finesse and to know what to do in those gray situations, you can make the wrong decision and get yourself in a lot of hot water. So, and I can give an example to that if you'd like, but that is 100% probably my top lesson, is to learn how to adapt in the gray situations when you're kind of breaking a rule, but in that particular gray situation, the rule should be broken. and it's okay. And I definitely, for quite a few years, was very black and white. And frankly, still to this day, I'm a pretty black and white person. But you have to lean into the gray sometimes, and that is critical.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. I had a supervisor yesterday I was talking to, and I said exactly those. He's like, "What do you do in that situation?" I said, I don't know. It's like, well, what's the policy? I was like, I don't know. It's like, well, there's a policy. I said, yeah, but it doesn't matter because every situation is different and you get paid to think, and one of the things that you need to trust people is that they have integrity. And if they break the rule, they're breaking the rule in the spirit of the guest for the right reasons, because you have to show empathy. And sometimes that rule doesn't apply. It's like if she used the word, I said, what would you do in that situation? She said, well, I usually start with, unfortunately, I said, first of all, as soon as you say the word unfortunately, you could say, unfortunately, I can't give you a late checkout, but you won $1 million. Guess what? You didn't hear the
Right. It's like saying the word policy. Nobody wants to hear the word policy.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I can't say no. I said, unfortunately is worse than no. Because it's like, if I was fortunate, I could do it, but unfortunately, I'm not fortunate. So it's absolutely true. Hospitality is one big gray area, and people that are rigid struggle in this industry. The rigid people go into accounting. And I don't mean that as a funny thing to say, but it's true. It's if you like to control numbers and control things, then go into hospitality. I mean, into accounting. You can't control people. You can lead people. You can finesse a situation, but you cannot control people. So if you're rigid, you should not be in the front of the house or really in hospitality. You should be in support roles of hospitality.
Very interesting. Or if you're somebody that always wants a script for everything, right? The gray, what I'm referring to is when you have to go off script, and that is an uncomfortable place to be.
Right.
But I feel like knowing that I had a leadership team that supported me, even if I made the wrong judgment call, that helped me grow and realize that it was still a safe space to kind of lean into that gray, make a gut decision, make a judgment call, but know that they still were going to have my back.
Yeah,
when you work somewhere, when the leadership doesn't have your back, that's when people really shy away from the gray, right? They want to just follow the rules.
Trust is everything. And if you have somebody's back, even like I was saying this yesterday as well in the leadership class I teach, I was like, even if you're think the person's wrong and they're about to make a wrong decision, but no one's going to die and no one's going to write your bad comment card, you let them win that little moment because one, they could be right, even though you probably in your 40 years experience, no, they're probably wrong, but that's okay because the number one thing you need behind the desk is confidence. And if you shy away from failing, you're never going to build that confidence. So I'd rather somebody fail and build confidence than me give them the answer so everything is perfect. And, only a true manager, a true leader understands that concept, that failure gives you more wins in the end. But it's like a kid, right? If you're protecting a kid and you basically put them in bubble wrap and throw them on the playground, they're not learning anything. It's only when they scrape their knee that they learn, okay, I shouldn't really go down that slide. Or, with our Adidas shorts in the 1980s going down a hot slide in 100-degree weather in Brooklyn, learn.
It's the same thing as sitting in the back seat of some cars with those fake leather seats that would get super hot.
Your father was smoking cigarettes.
Yeah. I was getting burned and hotboxing back in the day.
So after we read your book, what are we going to learn from your book? Like a lot of people write, including myself, about hospitality. I have a book called Show Up. And it was really kind of get out of your own way. It's really kind of get your head out of your ass kind of book. But in there's elements of hospitality. And a lot of people write hospitality, right? Will Gadira just wrote one, Sarah just wrote one, and she's writing another one. But what is it in your book that's different than everything else we're saying?
So I'm glad you asked that question. I was hoping you would. So my book is a straight memoir, old school memoir. So I am truly just unpacking and telling my story that captures a 10-year snapshot of when I wore a uniform. So this is not a business book. There's no lists or bold headers or, nuggets. You're basically extrapolating the wisdom yourself as you're reading my memoir. And it was written through the lens of that hourly customer-facing worker. So I think a lot of other people's books, whether they're a business book or there's maybe some components of a memoir, they're written from a leadership standpoint or an ownership standpoint. My book is not that at all. It's 100% my experience as the hourly worker. I made $10.50 an hour in 2004 as a concierge. And it's my viewpoint of going into this unexpected journey and what I learned over the 10-year span. So yes, straight memoir. It's interesting. I started writing the book 5 years ago. So it was before I read like Will Guidara's book, Unreasonable Hospitality. So I had no reference point. I've read now other books where there is a certain memoir woven through it. But yeah, I'm really proud to say that mine is not a business book. Can a business leader pull things from this book to go over with their team? 1,000%. But no, it's definitely meant for somebody that wants to look back fondly at their years spent in hospitality, somebody still in the trenches working today wearing a uniform, a college student that's thinking about a career in hospitality. And I think also the fun reader is just somebody that wants a fun beach read, that has always been the hotel guest, but doesn't know what happens behind the scenes and is just kind of excited for a tell-all of some of the magical things that happen when you are with the people that actually work at the hotel.
So it's not a Kitchen Confidential or White Lotus kind of book.
Not a White Lotus, a little Kitchen Confidential-esque, I would say. There's a book from many, many, many years ago, not a hospitality book, called The Nanny Diaries, that was written by two nannies that worked for affluent families in New York City.
On the Upper West Side.
Correct. So I would say it actually has some similarities to that type of book, where it is a bit of a tell-all. I had to change a bunch of names. And yeah, the hope is that maybe it does become a movie like Nanny Diaries.
It's funny because when they wrote Nanny Diaries, about that time I was working on the Upper West Side at the Lucerne Hotel. So I didn't know that world. I didn't know that whole world of nannies, and it was fascinating to kind of see how those people live, and to see that at least from my experience, the baby goes with the nanny and the parent goes to work out and goes to lunch and goes to. I was just like,
gets their nails done, gets a smoothie.
They're walking. You see the nannies walking down the street, and then you see the parents, man or woman, going to work out or going to lunch or wherever. I find that fascinating. Anyway,
that sounded like my life in Park Slope, walking around going, how's everybody off all the time at lunch? Jamie, thank you so much for being here. So it's really important now for you to give a good pitch on how to find this book and buy it when it comes out.
Sure. So it's out next week. I can't believe it. It's out next week, April 8th on Tuesday. I've learned that new releases always come out on Tuesdays, a little trivia.
Yeah, same thing with music back in the day. Yeah.
If you want to support a non-big box store, you can go to bookshop.org, and that supports all of the local independent booksellers. You certainly can get it on Amazon. You can get it from Barnes & Noble. If you live in the greater Philadelphia area, there are going to be many, many, many brick and mortar stores, both the Barnes & Nobles here as well as the mom and pop stores that will actually carry it in person. But my website, www.jcoopconsulting.com/book, has all of the details. And yeah, I hope you will all choose to come along on the journey and see what the magical things that I went through over a 10-year span.
Well, congratulations, because as a person that took 10 years to write his book, and then getting it in Amazon and getting the website and getting the cover and getting it edited and getting, it's a long journey. So congratulations on getting it out there.
Thank you. It was long, and I joke now that I have even more knowledge on the publishing industry than I might in the hospitality industry. And if I choose to write another book, it might be on how to write a book.
Yeah.
The thing is, I had to have a ghostwriter because I can't write a book by myself because my ADD gets in the way. But in getting it published, when I first started this whole thing, when I first had my show, Simon & Schuster gave me a deal, and I was just too busy to kind of meet the contract, so I couldn't get the book out. And then 10 years later, I don't need Simon & Schuster. I have Amazon. And, it's like kind of my new show, Hotel All-Stars, is now on Travel Channel. It's on YouTube. And that's where everything's going. Everything's going to self-publishing. Everything's going to YouTube. Most of these channels are going out of business. And so everything, if you wait long enough, everything kind of comes, comes to you.
Yes, well said. And one other thing I forgot to just quickly mention is I purposely made this book a paperback, not a hardback. And I did that for two reasons. A, I wanted it to be affordable. But I also, being the hospitalian I am, I wanted it to be easy to throw in your bag and take with you, whether it's on a train, a plane, a trip, a vacation. So I want to see a lot of people on the beach this summer reading this book. But yeah, I wanted to make it easy. No, but nobody wants a hardback book on the beach. So
I love that attitude, and now you make me want to read your book on the beach this summer. I absolutely love it. Jamie, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. This was a blast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and thank you guys for being here today. Anthony, thank you for being here today. I'm so glad our schedules finally worked out. This was a super treat.
Well, do you want to make the announcement now, or we make it another day?
What announcement? I don't got anything to say.
You don't that announcement?
Okay. That you're looking pretty good without a tie today? No, I got nothing else. I do have something important to say though, Anthony, and that would be, of course, you got to download the audio version of this podcast wherever you get your shows, and of course, follow us on LinkedIn and all of that kind of stuff that's out there.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that polo you're wearing is a Nordstrom polo.
I don't know. I don't remember. I think it might be on Tucket. This is the first time I'm wearing it. It's just been in my closet since the fall.
Yeah, I can see you on Tucket. Yeah, because I have one like that. But I also
have to figure it out. We'll have to check the label after this.
Nice.
I do need to go get some spring items though, freshen up the wardrobe. So
going through my wardrobe the other day and found 3 suits I didn't know I had, and I worn maybe once, and it's like, oh, I got new suits.
Awesome. I love it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, you've got one life, so blaze on, and
be kind to yourself.
See y'all tomorrow for realsies. See you then.